this is part
Roman numeral
2
1
of
a new unit
Industrialization
called
and
the Gilded Age.
So we are starting
before we get
with
into
letter
this,
B,
economic growth
Industrialization
in the
and
Gilded Age.
Invention.
This
One
next
of the
unit
things
that
that's
we're
going to
gonna be
help the
beginning in this
economy
class
get better
is
and
called the
bigger,
Gilded Age.
faster,
So let's
is
take
we're
a
going to
moment
see
to talk
new
about what the
inventions.
Gilded Age
Number one,
means.
Civil War helps launch
In
the
his
second
speech at the
industrial
time,
revolution.
Samuel Clemens
We
or
had
Mark
talked
Twain
about
was
this
asked
at the
to
end
talk
of our
about,
last unit. Is
what,
one of the things that
the United
launches
States looked
America
like in the
into the
last
second
half of the
industrial
19th
revolution or
century.
large industrial
Because the
revolution.
Gilded Age goes from right
is
after
we're
the Civil
going to
War,
see
1865,
we have several factors that all come
1898,
together
to help
and when he was
the
talking
North,
about that, he said that America
industrialize even
was
to a
in
much
the
greater
Gilded
extent than they
Age
did
where
before the
term
Civil
comes
War.
from. First of all, you have
Gilded
to have
means
capital.
it
So
means
we're
just
kind of
the
creating,
surface
if you'll
is
pardon the
covered in
horrible
gold.
analogy, kind of
So
an
he says at this
industrialization
time America,
stew, right?
on the
And your
surface
first
looks
ingredient is
wonderful.
capital.
We're going to have
capital is money.
railroads.
Businesses are going to get a large
America's
injection
gonna
of
go
money
into a
because
second
during the
industrial
Civil War,
revolution,
the United States skyscrapers was borrowing, printing money, raising taxes, industrial powerhouse all the war materials.
And so everything looks like it's really good for America.
Guns, artillery
But
pieces,
if you
whatever.
scratch the surface,
And so the
if
United
you
States
go
government is going to
beyond
be
that
pumping
little top
capital
layer
or
of
money
gold
into the economy,
and
into
shininess in
businesses,
America,
so they can
what you're going to
win the
see
war.
in
So
this
businesses are
unit
going to
is
have a
we
lot
have
of
increased
money
amounts
that
of
government
poverty,
is giving them, so
lots
they
of
can
immigrants who are
become
going to
bigger.
be living in that poverty. We're going to see
The
farmers
next thing,
struggling.
is we're going to see raw
we're gonna see
materials.
corruption.
Just as we said in
We're gonna
Section
see
A,
abuse of
raw
people.
materials are going to be pouring into the United
it may
States
be
because
shiny and bright on the outside,
they have access
but
to
Samuel
it
Clemens
through
or Mark Twain was saying it's rotten at the
railroads.
core.
So the railroads are going to allow
And so
businesses to get bigger and bigger and bigger,
that
kind of a
is raw materials
summation
from
of
all
what
over
this
the
unit
United
is
States.
about. Certainly industrial
Next,
growth,
markets.
and amazing things
Here we see
happening
railroads
for
again.
some of Americans.
Roads are going to
And
allow
then a lot of
companies
struggling
not just
for the
sell to
lower
people in
classes
their
of
immediate
America.
area, but they
Right.
can sell
So
to
now the
anybody
picture that we
connected to
see
that
on
railroad,
this title
which means
page,
mostly
we see a
most of
railroad
the
and it's
United
in the Rocky
States.
Mountains.
And then, of course, labor.
Chinese
As we said
immigrants
before,
who help in the
you
bottom
need
right-hand
cheap
corner
labor.
help
It's the
build it.
biggest expense for business.
And so
They
the
need
main
cheap
thing
labor
in this lecture
to
that we're going to talk
help
about
your
what is the
company
thing that
grow,
is
but
driving
grow profitably.
no pun intended.
And of course,
The
immigrants are going to
economy,
provide that cheap labor.
is railroads.
Railroads
And
are
then
going
the
to help
weak and
connect
south. The United States
raw
government is
materials
going to
of
be
the West
controlled by Republicans
to
during the
factories
Civil War,
and markets
so they're
of the
going to pass
East.
a whole bunch of legislation.
So it's going to
that's
help tie the economy
American
together.
businesses.
In addition to that,
like
all
the
the
moral
things
tariff
that
of
make a
1862,
railroad up
forcing
is you have
Americans
steel,
to
you have
buy
lumber, coal,
northern goods.
glass,
In addition to that,
leather,
because the South is
copper,
out, the North
all
can
of these things that
create
go into making a train.
the Railroad
Going to-
Construction Act of
since we're going to be
1862,
building tons
which
of
allows us to
railroads
go get those raw
trains,
materials.
locomotives,
We're going to need to have all of those industries develop, especially steel. And so we're going to see America, its economy is going to be boosted. The Gilded Age is
we see
a
number 2,
great
invention.
economic growth.
We're going
in
to talk
part,
about all
and to a
these new
large part
inventions,
because of
just
the
some
growth
of them,
railroads.
just to give you some examples of
So let's
how
start there.
we're going
Letter
to
A,
help the
tying the
national
nationalization
economy
together.
spread.
So as I
And so
said,
the first
on
thing
the
we see
previous
is
slide,
a cash register.
we're going to see
a
railroads
cash
play a
register
huge part
is
in increasing
what
the
you
American
do.
economy.
Before we had cash
Because,
registers,
one, we
people
get
would
raw
go to
materials
a
to
store,
markets,
or they'd go
and
to a
then,
business, and let's say a
finished
grocery
goods
store,
from factories,
and somebody would have to
and we'd also
meticulously,
see
by
this
hand,
desire
write
for
down all the
need for
items that you
goods
were
that
buying,
are gonna make
and then
build
write
our
the prices
railroads out
down,
of, like
and
I
then
said,
calculate it
lumber,
up by
steel,
hand.
those kinds
And as
of
you can
things.
tell, this
And
would
so we see
take
number
a
one,
really
rapid
long time,
post-war
which
growth in
limited the
railroads.
amount of
We're
goods
gonna
that
see
that
the United States in
supermarket could
1865,
sell.
and
Go
so
from
in this time we
35,000
see somebody
miles of
invent the
road
cash
track,
register,
which you
made
just
it
have
one
to
of the
put
top
in
countries
the
in the
number,
world in 1865
and the amount, and would then give you this big long receipt
to
near
really
the end of the
quickly.
time
And so
period, or a
this
little bit
invention
past
is
it,
a great
in
example of how
1900, where we have
businesses can do even more
192,000
business.
miles of
Technology
track.
makes their
So
workers more
Americans
efficient,
north
which
and
means they can
south,
produce
east
more,
and west,
which means
are
they
gonna
can
be
have
building
make more
railroads
money,
at an
business gets
increasingly
bigger.
rapid rate.
Next,
The picture
we
you
see the
see is
typewriter.
just the railroad growth
Again,
in
before this
Illinois.
time, everything needed to be
1850
handwritten,
was the first
written
year on
out,
the chart at the
and
top.
that was hard for
We see just a
businesses.
small
It took
amount of
time,
roads, and then by
sometimes you couldn't
1860,
read
10 years
somebody's
later,
handwriting.
more than
There would be
quadrupled the amount of
miscommunications.
roads
And
just
so
in
we
Illinois
see
alone. And then it just
businesses
keeps going up and up and
need
up
a better,
until we get
faster
to
way of
about
communication,
1900,
and so
and
the
then we see
typewriter
railroads
is written.
start to take
This
off
allows
a
you to
little
type really quickly. You can read what the person
Now,
has
these
written
railroads
down,
are
so there's
really
no
expensive.
mistakes because of
The
miscommunication.
railroad that we're going to focus on
and
is
so
the
we see this
Transcontinental
allows
Railroad,
business to be
and the
more
first
efficient.
Transcontinental Railroad
Always
you
when
can
a
see
business
on the
is more
map.
efficient,
There's
they're
several
gonna
of
be
them
able to
there.
make more
But
money
the first one is
because
going to
they
be
can
built by
cut
the
out
Union
waste.
Pacific and the Central Pacific.
Next, we
right
see
in the
something
middle of the
called
map,
stock
going
ticker.
through southern Wyoming. Wyoming,
the stock ticker
and Nebraska.
is
And
a
so
device
this
that's hooked
railroad
up to a
going all the way
telegraph.
across America
And so
is gonna
let's
be
say that
very
you're in Denver,
expensive.
Colorado,
Not just
and you
the-
want to invest
the
in the stock
construction
market,
materials
but it's really
and all the
hard
workers,
because you don't know whether
but
the
the
price
most
of the stock
important
you're about to
part of
buy
it
is
is
up
gonna
or
be the
down.
land. The
If
rarer
it's at a
companies
low
have
price,
to
then buy
make
up
it a
land
good reason
put
to
their
sell
railroad
or
traffic
whatever.
on.
You don't have
And it's not a
up-to-date
thin strip.
information,
They're going to have to
and so
buy
you're going to be
large
making
chunks of
stock
land
purchases
because they
based on
haven't
old
yet
information,
surveyed that land
which is
out
not a good
west.
way to compete
So they
with
don't
people
know
in New York.
what exactly is
And so the
gonna form
stock
best route,
ticker,
so
they
have to buy
send
up a bunch.
information
So this is
down
gonna
the
be a huge
telegraph
expense
wire
for
to
the
wherever
railroads,
you are,
and they just
it's
can't
hooked up
afford
to
it.
this ticker,
It's way
and the
too
ticker will
expensive.
constantly
It would be like today
roll
if we're
around
saying
and
we're gonna
around,
build a
printing
railroad to the moon,
up-to-date prices,
no private company
stocks,
can afford that.
that you might
Even
want
if it
to
was
buy or
technically
sell.
possible,
So now
and so the
more
United
people
States
can invest
government
in the stock
steps
market.
in.
The
When
United
that
States
happens,
government
they
has
have
more
more
investors,
to do everything
so
it
companies can get richer
to help
because they
and
have more
promote
people
the
building
building
their
of
stock.
roads in America, especially transcontinental
And of course,
railroad.
we get even
So we
better
see
forms
the
of
role of the
communication
government
with the
certainly
telephone.
changing
In
here in the Gilded
1876,
Age.
Alexander Graham
Because the
Bell
Civil War
invents
kind
a way
ends
of
this
communicating
democratic
across
idea
great
of having a
distances by
small
voice.
government
Before this
and more
time,
power
you
to
had
the
the
states.
telegraph, which was
Now,
great,
of course,
but
the
you had to have
Republicans are gonna
somebody who
have their
could
way.
understand
They're
Morse
still in
code
power,
and do the dots
so
and
we're going
dashes,
to
and that would
build
take time to
railroads,
transcribe
with government
and find
assistance
somebody who could
because
understand
Republicans
the
want
code.
at this time the
And so
government to be
now
strong
I could just
and
pick up a phone
powerful,
in Denver,
more
Colorado,
powerful
and I could
states,
place
and
my
they
order
certainly want the government to be used
for
to
such and
promote
such
business.
amount of goods I
And so
need, or I could
what we're
order
going to
a
see is you
stock,
can see the
or I
pink
could buy
on
a
the map.
bond.
That is
And
all
so now
land
again,
that
businesses
is
are more
given
interconnected.
to the railroad
You have
companies
investors
from the
being
United States
connected to
government.
businesses.
It's not
And so
alone. We
it's
see
called the
business
federal
begin
land
to
grant,
grow.
and
And
we are
again,
just
the
the United States
overall
government is just going
trend
to
you
tell
need
the
to
Union
understand
Pacific and the
as
Central
the businesses
Pacific
get bigger
or
and
some
bigger
other
and
railroad
bigger through
company
competition
that this is a whole
and
bunch of
through
land. We're
better
talking millions of
technology.
acres we're going to give to you.
Next,
Next,
new
new
inventions
inventions
continue.
continue.
We
We
see
need
the
a railroad. We want a railroad for
This is
economics.
certainly
We
going to
wanna
help
be able
people
to
who
get out west
grow
quickly.
food or
So the
rural
federal
ranchers.
government is going
if
to
you
just
grow
give a
perishable
huge
food,
land giveaway to railroad
food like
companies.
tomatoes that are going to spoil.
The next thing
or
it's
if
going
you
to do is it also
run a
going to
meat
provide
packing
really
plant
low
and you
interest
slaughter
loans
10,000
to these
cows a
railroads and
day
construction
in the
companies.
past,
And so now
your
they
business can only be
afford
so big
to
because
build
those
the
cows
railroads. They don't have to
meat
pay a
spoil.
bank back with
But now
lots
that
of
you have
interest, now they
refrigerated
can just pay the
cars,
government
you
back
can
with
have
really low
huge meat
interest.
packing
So we
industry
see
in
two
Chicago
ways that the
that can
federal
slaughter those
government
10,000
is helping,
cows, put them on
promote
ice,
railroad
they'll
growth.
stay cold in
On a
the
local
refrigerated car,
level,
and then
we're
you're
going
going
to
to
see
see
that
the
the
whole
whole
entire
entire
United
United
States
wants
sell it
railroads to
to.
come into their
And so your
town.
meat packing
Because if you
company,
can get a
there really
railroad
is
to
no
come into your
limit to
town,
how
how
big
big
Denver
you
on the
can
map
be.
eventually
Companies get bigger
they
and
will be
bigger.
connected to the transcontinental
Next,
railroad
we
through
see
a
railroads
trunk line,
create this thing
which
called
means
an
an additional
standard
line.
gauge.
But at the
gauge
start,
is
they
the
were
distance
not
between
part
the
of the
tracks,
transcontinental
and
railroad.
up
It went
till
north of us into
about
Wyoming.
1865
And so
or
that
so,
meant that Denver
we
wasn't
saw
gonna
that
grow
railroad
because there's no
companies,
people
they all
coming
had
to
their different
Denver, there's no way to
gauges.
get you across
And so
the
if you
market.
wanted to transport goods
towns
from one part of the country
begging
to
for
another,
railroads to come
you had to
through
offload those
their
those
location.
goods
And so
every
we're gonna
time
see
you change
towns give
railroads
railroad
because they
companies
would all
tax
have
breaks.
different
We're gonna
gauges,
see
and
towns
one
give
trip
them
car
free land.
could not go on
We're
another
gonna
railroad's
see
track,
them
which was really
bribe the
inefficient.
railroad companies
And so
to
we
come
start
to
to
their
see
town.
railroad
And
companies
so
come
government,
together,
bottom line,
especially
whether
if they're
it's local,
monopolized,
state, or
and
national,
they all have a
it's gonna
standard
do everything they
gauge.
can to
Now
build
railroad
railroads. If you
traffic
look at
is
the
easy.
state of
You have
Iowa,
a refrigerator car full
they go
of meat
crazy
from
at this time
Chicago,
building
and
railroads.
even though
They
you're going
don't
to be going
need-
from one railroad
but
company
this is a
to
great
another,
way
you can just
to,
move the car
personally, if you're a
around. You don't have to
politician,
unload
to
and
get
unload
much
them every
money.
time you change
All you
tracks.
have to do, it's a way to get bribes.
And then the
railroad
final
company
thing
comes
we see,
to you,
this
they say we want to
unfortunate
build a
accident,
railroad,
we see that they
and so
develop
you
these
say,
things
well, I'll
called
get
air
the state
brakes,
to pass the railroad,
which means
if you
instead
give
of
me
in the
personally a
past
bunch
when
of
a
money.
railroad engine
And so
wanted to
north
stop,
and
it
south,
would be
we've already
metal
talked
on
about
metal,
this
and you would put a metal paddle
construction governments
or
that's going on
pad
at this time.
to
But in the
a
North,
train
too, we're gonna see
car or a
lots of
train wheel,
corruption
and
between
that would create all
railroad
kinds of
companies
sparks, which would
and
create
fires.
fires.
The
Railroad
train would
companies
stop and try to
as you see in the
bribe,
picture,
right out
state
the end
or
of the
federal
station.
officials into
But now that we have these air brakes, it
railroad,
becomes much
or
more
giving them
powerful
these
brakes,
low-interest
less
loans.
fires, and
Right.
so
The last thing
transportation
on the
is
slide,
safer
if we look in the
and
bottom
faster
left-hand
and more
corner,
convenient.
we
And
see
when that
how
happens,
the
of
railroad
course,
companies
we
actually
see
got the
an
land.
increase in production.
So
and
if you look in the bottom
industrialization.
right-hand corner, you see this kind of yellowish
Inventions.
color with the
So
railroad
let's
track
talk about a
going
specific
across
invention
it.
that you could put in
And
an
so
essay.
that that land would be given by the government.
Thomas
so
Alva
would land
Edison,
on both sides of the
and
track.
Edison
and
invents many
alternating
things.
squares.
One of the
so
things
all
you
the
see
pink
here is the electric light bulb.
are going to be
So how does this
given
help
by the United States
industrialization?
government to the
Well,
railroad
before the
company.
electric light bulb,
Now, obviously, they're not using
businesses,
all of those
factories
pink
that wanted
squares
to
to
stay
build the
open,
railroad.
they had
And
to
so what the
use
railroad
oil
company
lamps.
will then be able to do
And
is
so they
sell
would go
that
out
land
into the ocean
to make a
and they would
profit.
kill a whale.
So
and
not
then
only
render
are the
its fat
railroads
down
getting to be able to
to
build
oil,
these railroads
or they
cheaply
would
because the
go
government's
to
just
what
giving
was
them land
new,
and cheap
this new
loans,
petroleum,
but they're also
oil,
letting
and you
railroad
would
companies sell their
then turn
excess
some of that
land
into something
to
called
farmers
kerosene,
and to make a buck, and so that helps
these oil
defray the
lamps
cost
were
of the
really
railroad.
explosive.
So this is a
If
sweet
anybody
deal
knocked them over,
for
they would
railroad
smash
companies.
and start the factory on fire.
And why
And
this
so
land
it's
is so
dangerous.
important
And so
is because
Thomas
it's right next to
Edison
the railroad.
creates the
So just by
electric
having the
light
railroad
bulb,
there,
because
the
if one
value
them
of the
breaks, no
land
big
goes
deal,
up,
it's not
which
gonna
means the
cause
railroad
fire.
can charge
Electricity
farmers
is
who
a
are
lot
going to
cheaper
sell
than
them
oil.
west
And
as
so
much as
we
they
see that
possibly
now
can. So they're going to
factories
make
can
quite a
stay
bit of
open
money
longer,
off these railroads.
safer way into the night. and they can
The
keep
squares,
producing
the
around
alternating
clock.
squares that are not pink, that they're blue
Thomas
color,
Edison also invents
those are
the
going to be what the
phonograph,
United States government
which is a way
keeps
of recording music
to give
up
out as
before
part of
this
the
time.
Homestead
If you
Act.
wanted to listen to
But what
to
we
music, you
notice
had to
here
go
is part of the Homestead
to,
Act, which we talked about
a
before, that
concert
gives away
hall
free
where
land
somebody
out
would
west.
sing.
It
And
does,
so we
of
see
course,
now
it's a
that
good
people
thing for
can
farmers,
record their
but a lot
voices
of the
on,
land, the really good land, the land
phonographs
next to the
or record
railroads,
players,
is
and so
already
we have
going to
a new
be
industry
given away
being born.
to the railroad
We have the music industry.
So the Homestead Act does
now
help farmers
there's a
get
lot
cheap
more
land,
ways for people to
but
make
not as
money
much as we would
because
think, because a lot of the good land
now
has
a new
already gone
industry.
to the
People
railroad
can
companies,
make these phonographs and sell
either
it
to build
new
their factory
factory,
or for them to sell.
We have people
to help
who
defray
produce
some of the
records
cost.
and then sell them
so
out
we
for
do
people to
see
listen
settlement
to
of the
in
West at
industry.
this time,
And so
but
we see
it's not
all
just
of these
because of
new
private
industries
business,
popping
but
up
it's
with
also
new
because the
inventions,
federal
which means
government,
more
and state
jobs,
governments,
more
and
companies.
local governments get involved.
Thomas
in order
Alva
to
Edison
promote
also had
railroad
another
growth.
invention, and it was called.
So let's talk about the
a
most
think
important
tank.
one. The
Edison is going to get a
Transcontinental
whole bunch of
Railroad. If you
inventors
remember,
together
before
who
the
have
Civil
very
War,
creative
as
minds,
part of the
and he's going to sit
Kansas-Nebraska
down and
Act
say,
in
okay,
1854,
we're in the process.
Stephen
Let's
Douglas
this
wanted
factory
a northern
invent,
route. Ideas.
and
Let's
so
invent
we're going to
new
see
things.
that. And so he's going to create
hundreds
of
the
thousands
railroad
of
was
patents
put on
new
delay because the
inventions
North and the
that is
South
going to
eventually
stimulate
still
new
couldn't
industries
agree,
and create new
even after the
jobs all
Kansas-Nebraska
across
Act,
America.
to start the railroad.
And of course, one of the
but
things
during the
he
Civil
invents
War
is the
in
motion
1862,
picture, right?
the Republican-controlled Congress,
at this
because remember
time,
the Democrats,
we just
a lot
had
of them were
photographs,
Southerners,
and of course he has the idea of putting a
they
whole
go
bunch of
ahead
photographs
and without much
on
opposition,
a piece of
because
film,
Republicans are in
and just
charge
like a
in the
flip
Civil
book,
War,
making
passed the
a
Railway
moving
Act of
picture.
1862,
So that's what we
which
actually
says
call
that the
these
government
things
is going to
moving
build a
pictures. We call them
Transcontinental Railroad.
movies.
Well, private
So
companies
again,
are, but the
a
government's
whole
going to give them
industry
land
is
grants and
formed.
low interest
Not
loans.
just the factories.
And so we see the first Transcontinental Railroad
the
start in
reels
1862,
and the motion
and it's
picture
going to
devices,
go
but
from
also
Omaha to
somebody
San
to make
Francisco,
movies and
across the
actors.
Great
And so
Plains,
each one
over
of
the
these
Rocky
new
Mountains,
inventions
across
is
deserts in
creating
Utah,
more jobs
over the Sierra
for
Nevadas,
people.
and then eventually get to the
more
West Coast through
people
San
come to
Francisco and
America
Sacramento.
to find a job. So again,
In
that leads to more
1869,
urbanization. It's all
we
interconnected.
see this railroad completed. Its
Next,
construction
Section
is
C,
completed.
captains
we have
of
two
industry.
railroads.
So just like the robber
we
barons,
have the Union
there are
Pacific
through
Railroad Company that
competition
is
and
building
all of
from
these new
Omaha
industries,
west.
we're going to see
and then we see the
that,
Central Pacific,
there's going
which
to be
is building
some
from
men
Sacramento
who become
east.
so successful
and the two railroads,
at dominating their
construction
particular
companies, they
industry
meet
that
together
they will
in
create
Utah,
a monopoly.
just north of Salt Lake,
And so,
in a
if
place
we want to
called
look at this as a
Promontory
positive,
Point. We see the two
captains of
railroad
industry, that
companies
sounds
coming
very
together,
positive,
and they're
almost like a
toasting in the
superhero.
picture
These
because they're
men
happy
are
now we
going to
finally
help
have a
America
transcontinental
become an
railroad,
industrial
which will greatly reduce the
powerhouse.
amount of time
They're
it takes
going
to
to
get
make
west.
America industry strong. They're going to provide
The
jobs for
Transcontinental Railroad
people.
continued.
And
So who built
they
the railroad?
are
We
a
know that the
helpful
United
thing.
States government played a part. We
There
know
is
that,
another
of
way
course,
of
these
looking at
railroad
captains
companies
of
played a
industry.
part.
Again,
but
we
who
call them
actually
the
did
robber
building?
barons. They're going to
And
be
this is
so
primarily,
powerful.
if we're going to
They're
talk
gonna
about the
have such a
Central
monopoly
Pacific,
that they're going to
the railroad
oppress
that
the
is starting in
workers. They're going
Sacramento
to force
and
people
going
to have monopoly.
It's
to pay
primarily
whatever
going to be
prices they
built by
want.
a new
And so we
immigrant
have
group that has been
two
coming in
competing
greater and
views of
greater
wealth here
numbers,
in America.
Chinese
A
immigrants.
positive view,
The economy with China was not doing
these
well
super
in
rich
the
men who own
60s and
industries
70s
and factories
and 80s,
are helping
and so the
America become
Chinese were
industrialized.
they're
Or
pushed
we
out of
can view
China
them
because
as
not
bad
very many
people, robber
economic
barons who are going to
opportunities.
oppress the
But as
workers.
America
and
is going
overcharge
through
their
this Gilded
customers.
Age, this
And
time
of course,
of
we see in the
industrial
picture,
revolution,
this
they're going
is
to be
a view
attracted
of
to the
wealth
United
of
States to
choosing
come
to
here for
view
the
the
jobs.
rich people on top
And we talked
as
about
evil
Chinese
people
filling
who are going to
worker
oppress
roles in San
the
Francisco
peasants,
during the gold
oppress
rush.
the workers,
But now we're
and they're
going to
have to
building
support
so we
all
see a
of the
whole
wealth
bunch
of the rich
of Chinese
through their
here,
backs and hard work.
and they are helping to
As you
build
can
the
also see in
railroad
the bottom
across the
right-hand
Sierra
corner
Nevada
with the
mountains.
pickaxe,
Very dangerous
the
work.
pickaxe and the sledgehammer.
The railroad
were starting to see
companies
the beginnings of
saw lots of
communism in
fatalities
America.
of the
We'll
railroad
talk more about
workers.
that later
They weren't
because
that
those two
concerned
things come
if they
together
lost
to
railroad
form
workers
the
because they're
communist
immigrants,
symbol.
and we can pay them
All right.
a small
So
amount of money.
here's one of our captains of industry.
So
and
this
this picture on the right shows you
working on the
the
railroad.
positive view. This is Andrew Carnegie.
The Union Pacific,
he is
which
going
is
to
the
make his
railroad
fortune
building
in
from
steel,
Omaha
and
west.
so we see that he
They're
is providing
primarily
jobs
going to
for
use
America. He's
and
creating
also
money for
another
America.
immigrant group.
He's
This one
providing
from
opportunities
Europe,
for America.
Irish
And
workers.
so we
Irish
have,
are still
again, these
continuing to come into America.
Are these super rich men robber
because
barons?
of one, the
Are they
potato
oppressing
famine, but
people?
also the economy.
Or are they captains
Ireland
of
is not
industry?
very good.
Are
and
they
have all of these
helping
jobs.
America become
And so
strong
we see
and wealthy?
Irishmen. Most of them settle in the Northeast, but some of them do come out west to work on the railroads.
Also, they're
And
creating,
again,
of course,
it's
a
very
higher standard of
dangerous
living.
work.
If you want to think of it as a positive,
They don't
all
get
of
very
these new
much
inventions,
pay,
these
but it
new
is certainly
devices,
better than
these new
starving to
jobs
death
is helping
in
America
Ireland.
have more money. And so again, we get these competing.
And so
views.
next we have this concept of
Next,
Hellions.
so let's talk.
These
for the
railroad
next few
companies,
slides,
what they would do, they'd be out in the middle of nowhere,
captains of industry,
and they would
men,
have the construction materials
who make their
on the
money,
train,
how they
and
make
the
their
workers
money,
would go out
and
in front of the train.
what they would spend all day laying another mile or two of track.
And so we're going to start out with John D. Rockefeller. John D. Rockefeller
would
is
forward a couple of miles
control
to just
the
completed
oil
track,
industry in America.
and then the workers
and
would
his
actually
company is
stay
called
on
Standard Oil.
dormitories that
and
were
so what
train
we see
cars.
again,
And so every
what
time
we
the
used to
workers got
light our
paid,
homes
not
were
only would there be a
these,
dormitory on the
kerosene
train,
lamps. You
there would
see a
also be
picture on the
saloons
left.
and brothels.
And kerosene
we
is made
see
out
this
of
is kind
oil
of part
that
of
you
the
dig out of
Wild
the ground,
West.
petroleum.
We see these Chinese or Irish immigrants.
Rockefeller does not
living
make
out
his
in the middle
money
of
by
nowhere,
going
working
and
for the
drilling
railroad
for oil,
company,
right?
and almost for free.
Oil
because they would get very low
in the
pay
earth.
on
It's hard to
payday,
find.
and then the railroad company would make most of that money back because the workers would spend their money in the company saloon
on looking for
or the
oil
company
because it's a
brothel.
hit or miss kind of thing.
And so the
he
railroad
does
company
not
would tend
go
to
out
recoup
and
most of its
drill
losses
for
in
oil.
pay What he
back
does
from these
do is he
workers.
starts
And so we
building
see
refineries.
these kind of
refinery is where
all-male
we turn that oil into kerosene,
company
to
rolling
light
company
and heat our
towns
homes.
where we see railroad
and so he
workers
says,
putting
look,
the-
this is a
putting the
much
tracks
better
together that will
industry to
connect
dominate
America.
because I don't have to have risk
Impact
here.
of the railroads
I don't
on
have to
the
go dig
economy.
for the oil.
So this is a point I
drill
made
for the
earlier.
oil.
The oil's
what
gonna
we're going
come
to
to me.
see
Let other
is that
people
the
take that
railroads
risk.
represented here
What
by
I'm
these
gonna
black
do is I'm
lines,
going to
they're
create
going
the
to
refinery.
connect
I'm gonna
America.
control all the refineries
all
in
of the
America.
new resources
And
of
so
the
if
West,
people
whether
want
it
to buy
be
oil,
cattle ranches in Texas,
or kerosene, which is refined
cotton
oil, they're
production
gonna have
in the
buy it
South
from
because
me.
we're going to be building railroads. Of course, you remember.
And so
during
John D.
Reconstruction,
Rockefeller and
there's
Standard Oil
lots of
continued.
corruption. Rockefeller,
In the
even though
South,
he's a
as we try to build
capitalist, he
railroads as
believes
well.
that competition
Gold
is
and
bad.
silver out west.
He doesn't like the people
wheat
he's
and
competing
corn on the
against,
Great
the other
Plains.
people who own
All
oil
of those raw
refineries.
materials are going to be
And
connected
he says that
to
this
the
is wrong
factories in
because
the
if I have to have an oil
Northeast. And so
refinery,
now our
my
factories
competition
can
has
get
to
bigger.
have an oil
They have
refinery.
more
We're not going to share
resources.
one.
And then,
so
of
that
course,
creates
we see by the
duplication
line
of
here,
facilities.
we're going to
It
see
also,
factories
because of
be able to
competition,
sell
drives down
their
my
products, their
profits.
finished goods.
It would be much
to
better if I
greater
just
and
owned all the
greater
oil
numbers of
refineries
people,
and I could charge
to
whatever
bigger
I want.
markets.
So he
Whether
is
they're
going to try
back
to
out
get
west
rid
or
of
in the South,
competition
he's
for
going
the
to
cities of
try
the
to
East.
drive
And so the
his
U.S.
competitors
economy
out
is
of business,
really
and of course we
getting
call that
tying together
creating a
north,
monopoly.
south, east, west
Because of
how
these
do you get rid
railroads.
of this competition?
And so
we've already
result
talked
of
about
how
that, and
railroads
a big
get rid of
trend we need to pay
competition,
attention to
cutting
in
prices,
this
secret
lecture
rebates, pools,
is
he
that
certainly is going to use
businesses are
those
going to get
techniques
bigger and
too.
bigger and bigger.
He's going to invent some other techniques
in
to
part
drive
because they have
competitors out of
more
business.
resources that
And
they
so
can draw
here are
on, and
secret
they have
rebates.
just
And
a
we talked about
limited
this in the
number of
road
markets.
industry.
It's not
But
just
he's
the
going to
town
get
that
you
can
can
sell
sell
to,
to.
but now
So
it's
here
all
you
of
have John D.
America, all
Rockefeller,
of the
and if you can
world.
remember the
And
previous
so we're
slide,
going to see that
he has his refinery.
businesses get
and
bigger
so
and
he
bigger
has
and
to
bigger
get
through
the
competition,
oil from
and eventually
by the end of this
from the
lecture, we're going to see
grill
that some
to his
industries are
refinery, where he
completely
refines it into
dominated
kerosene,
by one or
and then he
two
has to send the
businesses.
kerosene
So
out
the
to
age
his
of
customers.
super
So he
super large
does depend on
corporations
railroads
is
on
about to
both
occur.
sides of his business, bringing the oil
So
in,
who is going to
sending
work in these
kerosene
factories?
out.
Who is
And
going to
so
build these railroads?
a big part of
And so
his
we
cost
talked about the
was
Chinese and the
paying
Irish
railroad
but
companies
we're going to see
to transport
immigration
his
in
goods.
America
And so what
dramatically
he does
increase
is he goes to
during the
railroad
Gilded
companies
Age.
and says,
Simply
look,
because
do you want
we're
my
going
business
through
or
our
not?
second
And
industrial
of course the
revolution.
railroad companies
We
do.
have
And
millions
so he
of
says,
jobs
you need to give me a
available.
secret rebate.
So
if
that
I'm going to
is
use
going
your
to
railroad
attract
company,
immigrants to
you're
come
going
to
to
the United
pay
States.
me
We have
to
two
use your
kinds
railroad
of immigrants,
company.
though.
And so this is
We have
another
immigrants
revenue
coming
stream
from other
for him.
countries,
This is another
like
way
I
for
said,
him
the
to get
Irish
money.
or the
And
Chinese.
his competitors,
We
his
also have
other
immigration
refining
happening
companies
within
that he's
America.
competing against,
As
they don't know he's doing this because it's secret.
farm technology
And so they don't understand
increases,
why
we
Rockefeller
don't need as
keeps
many
getting
farmers
richer and
on
richer
the
and
farm,
richer.
and so we're going to see
they're
this
not,
internal migration.
and he keeps
as
paying
excess
these
children
railroad
on
companies to
farms
send
are
out
going to
his
go to the
kerosene.
city and
Why
look
isn't
for
he
jobs
having
in the city? So
getting
America
broke
is
from
certainly
this?
on the move.
They're having to pay the railroad companies.
Little do they
All
know
of
that the
these
railroad
people
companies are
moving to
paying
factories,
him.
wanting to
And so
get jobs
we
in
see that
factories,
he
of
uses
course
secret
leads to
rebate.
urbanization.
Next,
Cities get
you get the
bigger and
railroad
bigger and
companies
bigger.
to give him
So we
information
see
on his competitors.
we see
Factories
customers and
connected to
production.
railways,
And
then
so
around those
John D.
factories
Rockefeller
we
also
see
says, look, railroad
workers
companies, if you
who
want
are
my
living in the
business,
factories, they
I
set up
want you
home,
to
they
tell
set up
me what
house.
that other
And
company
so
is doing.
cities
How
like
much are
New
they
York,
charging for their
especially
kerosene?
Chicago,
Where are they
at this
getting their
time,
oil
from?
from?
Cleveland,
And
or
he uses that
Cincinnati,
then to drive
we
his
see
competitors out of
their
business.
size just
He undercuts their prices
So here's a
because he knows
picture
how
of
much
New York
they're
City at
charging.
the end of
And
this
so
time period.
he
And
is certainly
it's
using these
massive
kind of hardball
overcrowding,
tactics,
immigrants coming from all over
these
the world,
slightly
this is,
illegal
Little
tactics
Italy, I
to
believe,
be able to drive
on
his
the Lower
competitors
East
out of
Side.
business.
Also,
Right.
lots of Jewish immigrants.
The final
coming on
thing
the
that
Lower
he,
East
well,
Side
the
of
next
New
thing
York.
that he does,
So
is
we're
he
going to see
uses
that
this
then
thing called
cities
horizontal
are going to be growing,
integration.
not just out,
And so
but
what we
also
see on this
up. All of these
picture
people
is we
cram
see
into
the
these cities
production
looking for
process.
jobs.
We see oil being taken out of the
more
ground.
food part of
We
that
see it
is
being
that
put on
since we are
trains
able to
as
have better
petroleum,
farm technology,
sent to his
now it
refinery,
takes fewer
and
and
then
fewer
once it's made
farmers
into
to feed all these
kerosene,
people.
we put it on
So
train,
now
and we
cities
send
can
it
also
off to
get
the
bigger
customer.
just because
That's the production
we have more
process.
food.
And so
Food is in abundance
Rockefeller,
because of new
again, he
technology.
doesn't want to go and drill for oil. So he doesn't go out
Number
and buy
seven,
a
railroad
lot
barons
of
rise to
oil
control the
drills
industry
and try to go
so
find
a
the oil.
baron,
And he
if
doesn't
we're in
even
Europe,
buy
a
railroad
baron
companies.
is a
We already
lord,
talked
a
about how he
noble, deals with
somebody
them.
like a Duke.
So his goal is
so
to gobble
we
up
see
all
this
the
concept
refineries
in
in
America as getting a new
If he can
aristocracy.
put all his competitors
They're
out
not
of business
nobles
and own
because of
all the
birth,
refineries,
but they have
he
just as
controls
much
that
power as
one
nobles in Europe
stage of
because
the
they are
production
gonna
process.
dominate
And it's called
industry.
horizontal
So a couple of
integration.
slides ago, I
when
said
you
that
control
businesses are gonna
one
get so big
step in that
that a
production
few
process.
businesses will
Because
dominate an
in
entire
America,
industry.
if you want to buy
That's true
kerosene,
for railroads.
since he
And so we're
owns all
gonna
the
see a
refineries,
few,
there's really only one person you can get it from.
a few
him,
railroad
so he has a
men
monopoly.
who
He can
rise
charge
up
just
and
about
about whatever he
all
wants
the
for
railroads in
kerosene,
a given
which
area.
makes him lots
So
of
let me
money.
give you two examples.
One is William H.
And when we
Vanderbilt.
call this, when
His
he
nickname was
controls
the
all of
Commodore,
these different
and
companies,
he is going to
the
control
entire
a lot
oil
of
refining
railroads on the
industry,
East Coast,
we call that
and
a
then on the
trust.
West Coast we're going to
And
have
it's just a way of
another
organizing a business.
railroad
AP refers to it as a
magnate, another
new
railroad
way that is
capitalist who
emerging
controls
to organize
all
the
of those businesses
on the West
so you
Coast
can have
a lot of them.
monopoly.
His name is Leland
And basically what
Stanford.
happens is,
Let's pretend
famous
he's one of the
because
refineries
later on
oil
he
company
will give a
company
huge
A, B,
endowment
and
to
C.
create university.
And
Stanford
Rockefeller, what he
University.
does
Same with
is he
Vanderbilt
goes to those
on the
oil
East
companies and
Coast.
says,
And
those
so we
refineries,
see
he says, I'm going to put you out of
these
business
railroad men
unless
who
you
have lots
join
of
my
power.
company.
They control all the
and
railroad
so
industry.
each one of
And
these
so we're gonna
companies,
call them
A, B, and
railroad
C,
barons, or
they
sometimes
give
called
Rockefeller
robber barons.
control of their company,
These are
of their
people who are
refinery.
gonna control
They're
all of
trusting
these
him
railroads.
to
Now, the reason
run
we
it
drop
well.
sometimes
And so even though he may or may
railroad
not
and
own
replace
all
it
of these
with robber
companies
baron,
personally,
as you can
they're
see in
all
the
giving
picture,
him control of their companies.
these men who control
because
the
he
railroads,
knows, they know that if they don't,
they
he's
have
gonna drive them
monopoly
out of
in their
business.
area.
So that's why it's called a trust.
Who
They're
gets to
trusting
travel
him
on the
to
railroad?
run
If
everybody's
you're Leland
interests.
Stanford,
Now he's
and you
going to make
control
money.
most of the
They're going to
railroads
make
on the West
less money,
Coast.
but they still won't be out of
If
business.
you are a farmer
or a
we see as a
manufacturer and you
monopoly
want to get
through
your
trust.
crops or your goods to market,
Another
and
thing he
one
invents,
man who
because
controls
we're
the
going to see
railroads,
that
we have to
customers
use
start
him.
complaining,
and so he can
that
charge
Rockefeller's
just about whatever
kerosene is too
price
expensive.
he can.
And so the
and
government is
where he
going to
wants
say, okay,
and people
you
have
can't
to
have
give
trust
up that
anymore.
price. And so
we get this thing
here
we'll
we
talk
see
about
in
later
the picture
called
of the
Sherman
robber baron,
Antitrust Act.
the guy who owns
and
the
that's going to say
railroads,
you can't do
and
this
he is
trust.
able to
So Rockefeller
hold
says,
up
fine, I have smart lawyers.
farmers. You can
And
see
he comes
farmers
up
are
with a
dying on the front of the
new
train.
way of creating business.
Small
It's called
businessmen
interlocking
in the white hat,
directorates.
miners,
Interlocking directorates.
Once again,
let's use the
another
example
small
of
businessman on the
companies
right.
A,
He is
B, and
saying,
C.
stick them
So
up.
company
You
A,
have
B,
to
and
pay
C are
me
represented
what
here by
I
the three
demand if you want to get
refineries.
your crops to
So
market.
we
If you want to
cannot
get your
have
goods to
trust
market.
anymore.
And
We
so
can't
we
just
see a
give
very
control of
negative
Rockefeller
view
or
of some of these
business.
really wealthy
And so what we
railroad
have to
men,
do now is
come
we're
up in
going to
America
put
from
some
the
of,
people who
we're
don't
going to
have
let
a lot of
Rockefeller
money.
put
They
some of his
resent
guys,
these
his
railroad
friends,
barons or robber
on
barons
our
for
board of
having
directors,
so much
the
power.
people that run our company.
And so
now
how did these
Rockefeller,
men gain in power? How
he
are they able
controls
to
these
drive their
companies
competitors
because he
out of
has his
business
own
and
men
establish a
on
monopoly
the board of
of all the
directors of
railroads
all of his
in a certain
competitors.
area?
And so
And
he
so
says,
now I
one
control them all.
technique they do
So this is an
they cut
interlocking
prices.
directorate. So
The
these
bottom
are
line is
business
the same
techniques
thing.
that these
He's
guys
creating a
use,
monopoly.
these
He's
robber
controlling
barons
the
that we still see
entire
businesses
refining
use
industry.
today. And it's a way, again, to
Once
get rid of your
again,
competition.
people complain.
And the goal of any
And so
business
Rockefeller
is to
has to
drive
find a
your
different
competition
way
out of business
of creating,
and so
control
you
of
have
the
industry
industry.
without
Like in the
getting
game
the
Monopoly,
government upset
the goal
with
is
him.
to drive
And so
everybody
he
out of
creates
business so
something
you
called
control the
holding
board.
companies.
That's
Now
the
this is what a
goal
lot
of
of companies do
capitalism
today
is
to
a
be able
holding
to compete
company
with
is
your
where
rivals
you buy
and eventually
out
drive them out of
enough
business.
stock
And one
of
way
your
to do that is to cut
competitors
prices
that you
and
are
so
the
we will
majority
see
owner.
that in the short
And so
run,
let's
your
say
profits
company
go
A
down.
that's on the left,
But
the
if you're able to
refining
cut prices
company on
and
the
keep
left,
operating,
let's say Rockefeller wants to
then
take
you
that
can drive
over,
your competitors
and so
out
he
of
will
business
go and
because
he will
maybe they
buy
can't
just
cut the
enough
prices
stock
as much as you.
that he
So
controls
you would attract
more of
more
that stock
customers.
than
And
any other
eventually,
person or
as
any
your
other
competitors
company.
go out of business,
And so
they
he
can't cut
owns that
prices like
company.
you can,
Even if it's
you will
just
take
20%
more and
of that
more and
company,
more of the market
if
share,
nobody else
and you
in
will
that company
eventually
owns more than
be the
20%,
only business in
he's the
town. And then if you
controlling
want
member.
to, and so
Just like in the
he
picture, you can
holds
raise
control
prices
of the
to whatever you
company.
want.
So we
and
have this
force
thing
your
called
customers to
holding
pay it.
company.
Because you have
Today
a
we
monopoly.
see
They
this
can't go any
where
place
the
else.
same company owns
So
ESPN,
as a modern day example of
ABC,
this, we could certainly
Disney.
look to Walmart.
They're all separate
Walmart
companies,
is
but they're
a
owned
retail
by the
giant
same
because
one
they
company.
use
It's a
this
holding
practice.
company. They
So
give low
again,
prices,
we see
and it's
trust
very
being
hard for
developed,
Target or
interlocking
Kmart
directorates,
or
holding
some
companies.
mom and pop
The
store
bottom
on the
line
corner
is that companies
to
are getting
cut their
bigger
prices
and
as
stronger
much.
and
so
more
they go out of
powerful,
business,
and we're
eventually
seeing
competition
Walmart takes
shrinking,
more and
shrinking
more of the
as
market.
these
And
guys
then
like
maybe
Rockefeller
someday they'll
develop
have all the
monopolies
market. That's the
over
only place you
industries.
can go for clothes or tires or whatever.
He gets
and then
so
they could raise their
big
prices
that by
because they're the only game
1900,
in town.
John D. Rockefeller's Standard
Next
Oil
way
his
to
company
drive
is
your
producing
competitors out of business that we see
90%
at this
of all
time
the oil
is this thing
refinery
called
in
secret
America,
rebates.
which means he is super
A secret
wealthy
rebate,
and he
of
has
course,
a
it's
stranglehold
done in
on
secret.
the
You
U.S.
can't
economy.
know about it.
And so we
And
see
so
people
what
who are
happens
cartoonists
is,
like
if
this,
I'm a railroad
they don't
company
think that Rockefeller is
and
a
I
captain of
want,
industry. They think
Joe's
he is a more
Fish
negative
Market,
term,
let's
a
say,
robber baron.
to
He
use
has
my
so
railroad
much
company
money,
instead of my
money
competitor.
that they start
So
to
I
draw
publish my
his,
rates. I say, well, I'm
his
going to
company
charge
is an
you
octopus with
$1,000
over
per
America,
ton,
and so we
to
see that
ship
he is
your fish to
controlling the
market.
capital capital.
And
because
so,
he has so much money,
my competitor
if he
says,
wants
well,
to, he can
I'm
buy
gonna
a
use cutting
politician.
prices.
He can
So
go to
my
that
competitor
politician
says,
and say,
I
"Look,
will
I'll
give
charge
you
$1 million
$800 a ton.
if you pass this piece of legislation."
So, of
that helps
course,
my
Joe's
business."
fish market
Or he
should
controls
use my
state
competitors
capitals, you see on
cheaper
the
than
right,
$800
or he's
a
even
ton.
reaching for the
But
White
surprise,
House.
surprise,
He might even
he
control
still
the
uses
president.
my company
And so
at
we see
$1,000 a
these
ton.
companies in
And my
the Gilded
competitor
Age,
can't figure
certainly by
that
the
out.
end of the Gilded
Why
Age,
is
being
Joe's
super
fish
powerful,
market
having
using
all of
my
this
company
power
at
over the
$1,000 a
economy
ton
and the
and not
political
his company at $800 a
political
ton?
structure,
And the
certainly is
simple
making
reason
Americans
is
very
secret
nervous.
rebates.
They see
What
their
I'm doing
democracy
is to
as being
get Joe's
threatened by the end of
business.
the time
I
period.
am posting the price of $1,000 a ton.
Our next captain of
But then
industry
I'm
is
going
Andrew
to Joe
Carnegie,
and I say, look,
and I told
Joe,
you before,
pay me
for
the
Carnegie,
$1,000 a
he
ton,
has
and I will give
his
you
industry that he will control is
$300
the
back.
steel industry. You can put in your pocket. Carnegie is your
And
famous
don't
rags to
don't
riches
tell
story
anybody
in
I'm doing
America.
this.
He
Because
comes
I don't
to
want my
America
competition
as
to
a
figure
poor,
out how I'm beating
broke
him.
kid,
And so
with
I
a
give him
family
a
as a
secret
Scottish
rebate of
immigrant.
$300.
And he gets a job in the railroad
since,
industry,
and he pays
nobody is
attention
using
to
my
what goes
competitor's
on.
railroad.
A rich man
He goes out of
in
business
the company that he works
and so
for
that's the
sees
whole
his
goal.
talent
That's
and
his
his
hard
way
work.
to drive your people out of
And
business.
through talent
By
and hard work,
sending back
he
just a
rises
little
up to the
bit of money
railroad company,
under the
he
table,
makes
so
some
nobody
money,
knows,
and then he
to your
decides to
customers,
buy. So they
into
choose
the
steel
steel
industry,
and
he
your competitors
starts
don't understand what's
buying
going
up
on, why they're not
steel
choosing
plants.
them.
Foundries
Next, you
is what they're
form a
called, where they
pool.
turn
A pool is
ore
when a
into
bunch of
steel.
businesses come
And
together
so we see
to
he's going
drive
to
other
headquarter
businesses
his
out of
industry.
industry. So let's go back to my
Pittsburgh.
example of Joe's
Pittsburgh
Fish
is the
Market.
best
Let's say
place
again, I
where
want
all
his
of these
business,
things that he needs
and
to
there
use
are
to steel come
3
together.
railroads in
It's
the region that
it's
could
near the
help
East
help
Coast,
get his
so it has
fish.
lots of immigrants.
It's my railroad.
It's in the
It's
center of
company
the
B,
Northeast.
so I'm company A,
And so it's
and we have
got
company
lots of
B,
railroads,
and then we have
it's near
company
coal
C.
deposits,
So
so
we're
he can
all
fire up
competing.
his
All 3
factories.
companies are
It's near
competing
iron ore
for
deposits,
deposits.
and so
Fish
it makes sense
business.
to put
We
his
want him to
steel
ship
mills
his fish on our
which is where
railroads.
they make steel.
And so
or
I
foundry
hate
and mill,
company C.
in
They're my
Pittsburgh.
main competitor. And so I
So
go to
how-
company
what is the
B and I
path
say,
he
hey,
takes to
look,
drive his
you and me,
competitors out of
company
business?
B and me,
And
company
he is a firm believer
let's
in
form
research and
together, let's
development,
form
or
a pool.
R&D.
We'll
What he
share our
does is
resources.
he spends a
We'll
lot of
pool
his
our
profits, he
resources,
plows them
our
back into his
railroads, our
company,
money, our capital,
and he tries to come up
we will
with
be able
new
then, since we have
ways
more money
of making
together
steel
and more
cheaper.
customers
If he figures
together,
if he can
we
make
will be
steel
able to
cheaper
then
in
cut our
some new
prices
technological ways,
so
then
we're
he'll be able to
sharing the
drive his
cost between
competitors out of
companies A and
business.
B.
So
and we can drive
he
company
and some of
C out
his
business.
associates, they
Right,
go
once
to
that
Europe,
happens,
and they
then
find
maybe
about
A
this
and
thing
B will
called
go
the
back to
Bessemer
being competitors.
The
But
Bessemer
we're
process
joined together now to force the other
BSSEMER.
company out of business.
It is a
And so
new
we see that this
steelmaking
is yet
process
another
in
tool
Europe,
these
and he
robber
brings that
barons
over
use
to the
to
United States, and the
become,
picture just
the
shows you
only
the
guy
Bessemer
in charge
process.
of an
It's
area.
okay if you don't understand the process, and it allows him to
all
make
of these
large
things, of
quantities
course,
steel
lead
at
for
a really
you to
cheap
drive the
price.
competitors
Which,
out
of
of
course,
business.
his competitors
And
can't
once you're in
do,
control,
and so he
you can
slowly
charge
but
as
surely
much as
drives
you
them out
want.
of business.
There is nobody
The
else
next
that Joe's
technique
Fish
that he
Market
has
could
is
use.
that he
I have
saves
driven
in good
company
times.
C out of
Instead of
business,
going out
and
and spending
maybe
his
when they're out
money
of business,
on,
then I go
new,
against
a
company B,
palace,
even though they were
a new
partner,
mansion,
and cut prices,
a
or
yacht,
use
which he
secret
does
rebates,
do those
and I drive
things,
them out
but
of
not as much
business.
as their competitors.
Now Joe's
is that he saves his money,
fish
he throws
market,
away
they
his
can
money in
only
good
use
times.
me to get their
And then
fish.
when the
And
economy
so,
hits
like in the cartoon,
like
I hold the gun to their head,
that's when he goes out
and I say,
starts
look, if
buying
you want
up his
fish and
competitors.
continue to do
His
your
competitors,
business, you have to
during
pay
these
me
bad times, when people are
$2,000
buying
a ton.
steel, they can't make any money,
They can't
and so
do
he
anything
says,
about
look,
it, but
I'll
pay
buy
the
your
price
factory
because
for
I
a
have
really
a
cheap
monopoly.
price.
I am
And they
the
have
only
to,
railroad
because they're
company
facing
in the
bankruptcy.
region.
And so
This
he
is
buys
exactly
up
how
factories
Vanderbilt
in
and
depressions,
Stanford were able
and
to
when
build
the
up their
economy
fortunes
rebounds,
and build
now
up
his
control
company
of
is twice
railroads
as
in their
big.
region.
And then another panic hits, he goes up and buys his
Next,
competitors
corruption
up.
and
Now,
railroads.
when the economy rebounds,
Anytime we see
he's even
large
3 times
businesses
big.
that making
and
a
so
ton of money,
slowly but surely,
we're going
he's
to see
gonna
it's just human
dominate
nature. We're
the
going to
steel
see
industry.
corruption
in businesses and in the government.
So let's talk
So
about
let's talk about
integration,
watering stock,
which is different.
So
than
let me use
horizontal
another
integration, which
metaphor or an
Rockefeller
example.
does. So let's look at the
Let's
next
say
slide.
that I am
Vertical
a,
integration is you control the whole
a
production
cowboy,
process, not just
and I'm
one
driving
step. That's horizontal
my
integration.
longhorn
He's gonna do
cattle to
vertical
market.
integration, which
So I've
means
raised these
he
cattle,
is going to go out
and I'm
buy
driving
his
them to
own
market
ore
to sell.
mines.
And
And
right
he's
before
going
I
to
get
buy
to the
railroads,
market,
and he already has his iron mills, and then he's
I
going to have
know
his
that my cattle
railroads.
get paid
And so he
by
never
the ton.
has to pay
They weigh
anybody
my
else.
cows, and
Look,
for that
unlike
they
on
tell me, well, we're going to pay
Rockefeller
you
did
10 cents a
still
pound.
have to pay
So I
railroad
want the
companies,
heaviest
even though he
cows
got
I
secret
can,
rebates,
because when they
it's
weigh
still
them, if
money
they
out of
weigh more
Carnegie's
than
pocket.
less, then
And
I'm
so
able to get more money.
he doesn't want to have to pay
And so what I
anybody
do is an old
anything
cowboy
for his
trick
company.
is right
So he
before
goes
my
out and
cows
buys
get
his
to
own
market,
railroads,
I
which
give
means
them
he
a
doesn't
whole
have to
bunch
pay
of salt
anybody to bring
licks,
the ore
which
into
means
his
they
factory,
lick that
or
salt
to send
and they
the
lick
steel
that salt,
out
and
to
then they're
customers.
really thirsty.
Then he also buys
and
his
so my
own
cows
mining
start
companies.
drinking and
And
drinking
so
and
he's
drinking and
mining
drinking
his
to quench
ore,
their thirst,
and he can
and
mine
that
it
is called
cheaper than
watering
everybody else
stock.
because
Now
he
my
owns
cows are
his own
bloated with
companies,
water,
he owns his own
not so
railroads,
much meat but
he owns his own
water.
steel
They get
mills.
on the scale,
And
and
this is
lo and
called
behold, my
vertical
cattle weigh
integration.
more.
And so this is
I'm
one
able to
thing
get
that Carnegie
maximum
does
prices
to get his
for my
steel
cattle
cheaper than
even though
everybody
they
else
actually don't
to
weigh
his customers.
what the scale says.
Now,
'Cause it's
as
all
time
water
goes
weight.
on,
Well, that's
Carnegie
a technique
also
that I said
understands that
cowboy
he should
shoes,
do
but
horizontal
railroad
integration.
companies are
So he
going to starts out with vertical, but then he'll go up and buy as many steel mills as he can.
And so what they do,
and so we see him doing both vertical and
these
horizontal
railroad companies,
eventually.
right? They sell stock to raise
Andrew
capital.
Carnegie.
So if I'm
Andrew Carnegie
if I'm
becomes so
railroad company
wealthy
A
again,
and he understands
and I want to build a new railroad,
or I want to,
and so he comes up with something
politician or whatever. I need money.
He says that wealth is good, greed is good, making money is good because it creates jobs in
my
America.
company is doing
amazing
amazing.
Standard of living.
My company has
I'm giving
record
everybody
profits,
cheap
and if
steel,
you
which
want to
means
buy
they have
part of
better
my
bridges,
company,
better
here you
sky
go.
rises,
Safer
buy
bridges
some
and
of my
sky
stock.
rises. I am
So
making
my
everybody's life
investor
better
gives
because
me,
I'm
let's say,
providing
goods
$1,000
cheaper, or in this case, as you can see on the picture,
and so he
$50.
says wealth is a good thing.
And so they give me
let's read
$50,
quote
so
from
they
him.
are part.
He says the man who dies leaving behind him millions of available wealth
which was his
Sorry about
administrator
the
during his
and
life.
so they own
will
part
pass
of my
away
company,
unwept,
but I now have
unhonored,
$50 more that I can use.
No matter
to
what he
build up
uses,
my company, build
what
railroads, whatever.
uses he leaves the
So
dross
watering
left
stock
over, which he
means that
cannot
what I
take
do
with
is
him.
I lie to my
Of
investors,
such as
like
these, the
cowboy
public
did.
verdict will be
I
the
tell
man who
them
dies
that my
thus rich
company is doing
dies
amazing
disgraced.
business.
So once
even though
Carnegie
maybe
makes
it
his
isn't in
millions and
reality.
millions,
So I just
he then
boldface
goes
lie to
on a
them, and so they
crusade
think my
to
company
get rid
really
of his
is worth
wealth,
$50 a
spread it
share
back
instead of
to society.
$2 a share.
He believes that America
and so,
created an opportunity where he
so
could
I'm
become
able
wealthy,
to
and so now he's
cheat my
going to pay
investors
America back
and make them
by going out
give
and
me
helping
more
other
money.
people
So
become
that's called
rich
watering
too.
stock.
He
Of
has an
course, today you
opportunity
can't
and
do
a
this. The
duty
federal
to help
government
make other people rich.
regulates
That's the gospel
this.
of wealth.
They say
Once
you
you
can't
make
lie
your
to
wealth,
your
you
investors.
should spend it
But
back
one thing
in
we're going to
society
find
to
out in the
help other
Gilded
people.
Age is that the government
We have
did not see
a
that as their
responsibility
function.
to give
They're
back
certainly
to
going to
society
help business
and
grow,
help us become wealthy.
but otherwise they're
Now,
going to take a hands-off
he has a
approach to
special
business. They're not
kind
going
of
to say
way.
handing out
We're not
wealth,
going to
though.
force you to do anything
Carnegie,
that you don't want to do.
he
That's called
believes in
laissez
self-help
faire.
ideology.
It means in French,
he believes that
hands off
he's going
for
to give millions of
hands-free.
dollars to
And
go
so
help
this
people
certainly is
help
an age of
themselves.
laissez-faire.
He gives millions
where the
of
federal
dollars to
government is going to let
universities,
businesses
to,
do whatever they want,
to
concert
even if it's
halls,
illegal,
to
or not really
libraries.
ethical, and we're
Those
just
are
gonna
all
leave them
places
alone.
where people can go.
The only
and
thing that we
increase
are going to
their-
do is we
their
certainly are going to
self-worth.
help
That they can go get an
businesses,
education.
grow. We're going to
They can
give them
go
land
learn
grants or
to
cheap
appreciate
loans. So we see
knowledge
businesses
or
and the
or
government
music,
have this
and so
kind of
that's
weird
what he believes that
relationship
wealth should do.
where,
But he would walk
the government
right
helps
on his way to
businesses
give
grow,
millions
but
to
don't
the
do
library.
anything
He would walk right by
you know,
somebody who's
control
begging
or
on the
regulate
street.
their bad
He
behavior.
didn't believe in giving handouts. He would
If
tell
all
that
else
person,
fails
look,
and you still
I'm not going
can't
to give
give
you any
you any money,
money, really
but if you
drive
wanna
your
go and
competitors
enroll
out
in
of
that
business,
university or that
and
high
you have
school or
tried cutting
college that
prices,
gave
you
them
have
money
tried
to,
forming
go
pools,
help
whatever.
yourself.
And
I'm
you
gonna
just
help
can't get
you,
that other company out of business.
I'm going to go give money to
you
that
sue
university,
them.
so
So
you
let's
can
you
then
say
go
sue
help
them
yourself.
for
I want
some
you to
kind of
help
bad
yourself.
business
I'm
practice.
not
or
going
you
to
say
help you.
they did
And so
something
it's that
illegal
whole
or
teach a
whatever.
man a fish thing.
If you
So
give
you
a man
sue
a fish,
them,
he eats for
and
a
so
day.
what you do
If you
is
teach
that
a
you
man
can
a fish,
ensure
he
that you
eats
can
for a
win and
lifetime.
drive your
And
competitor
that's
out
what
of
he
business
believes.
by you just
If I just
bribe a
give you
judge.
money for a sandwich
You
today,
have the
you're
court
going to
case,
come
it's
tomorrow
you versus them,
So I'm
and
going to
you
bribe
bribe
the
the
judge,
judge,
you
you
give
give
him
them
$10,000 and say,
yourself
look, rule for
for a
me.
lifetime.
That's Andrew
and that will
Carnegie's
happen.
gospel
Or you
of
bribe a
wealth.
politician.
And we see,
Let's
say
on the left,
you and
Carnegie
another
Hall,
railroad company are trying
famous
to
music
build a
hall
railroad
that
in
he
the state of
donates money to.
California. And of course,
You
Carnegie
bribe all the
University,
politicians in
a fine
California
university
to
in
share
Pittsburgh,
your railroad
Pennsylvania,
company, and this
over
is
the
part
other
of
person's
his
railroad
giving
company.
back to
And so
society
you get the
ethos,
business
his
and they
idea of
don't,
what
you
wealthy
win.
people should
And
do.
so we see certainly this is a time of
J.P.
corruption
Morgan,
and
another
violence.
captain of industry. He doesn't do steel. He doesn't do oil.
So that will
his
end
trust
our
is the
first
money
part
trust.
of the Gilded Age
Maybe
lecture.
the best trust
When
we
we
have
come
of
back
all.
in part 2, we'll
and
talk
so
about
J.P.
industrialization
Morgan
and
is an
invention.
investment banker. In other words, he is the person you go to. If you have money and you want to invest in the stock market, he's going to be the one that will invest it for you. He knows the stock market in and out. He knows how companies are doing. He can tell you what companies to buy, what companies to sell, and when. And so he's going to be a trusted advisor. And so the richest people in America, the banks of America, they pay J.P. Morgan to help manage their money. So that's what an investment banker does. So that's why it's the money trust. Now, why does J.P. Morgan know about all of these companies? Because he, as part of his fee, he would say, look, I'll invest your money for you, and I won't even charge you that much for telling you what to invest in, but you have to let one of my guys from my investment banking company, it's called the House of Morgan, you have to put one of my guys on your board of directors. And so J.P. Morgan knew what every company was doing, if they were really doing well or not, if they were about to merge, if they were about to open up a new factory, if a factory is struggling to survive. He knows the ins and outs of these companies, what goes on behind closed doors, because he has them in on their board of directors. And so he has inside information about how to invest. Now today you can't do this, it's called insider trading. But once again, back then, the United States government is not going to tell businesses what they can and can't do. This is a time of celebrating business, being in bed with business. Right. So in 1901, J.P. Morgan creates the first billion-dollar corporation in America. J.P. Morgan, he convinces Andrew Carnegie to sell all of his steel mills, and he joins it with other steel companies, and they join together and create U.S. Steel, which is the first billion-dollar corporation in America. Of course, J.P. Morgan is going to get a hefty fee for organizing this merger, but we see that this is the kind of money we're talking about. As time goes on in the Gilded Age, businesses are getting bigger and bigger and bigger through mergers or competition, and it's because of the efforts of guys like J.P. Morgan. So this leads to a new class in America. It's called the nouveau riche, which in French means the new rich. We're talking about Carnegie, Rockefeller, Morgan. These are the guys that are now in control of America. not only do they have so much power that they can control Congress, as you see in the left-hand side picture, but they also have so much money that they control the Senate and the presidency. So we see mockingly this picture of Rockefeller. He has so much money, he's so powerful that he can take over Congress. We're turning Congress into a refinery. He can tell the president what to do because the president probably got elected with Rockefeller's money. On the right-hand side, we see the Senate, and then we see all of these big, huge captains of industry, and it says trust on their stomachs because these are all, the copper trust or the beef trust or the coal trust. They're the companies that have so much money they can get politicians elected or they can buy politicians. So we see this super powerful new aristocracy develop in America, the nouveau riche. Now, of course, there is the old money in America, sometimes called blue blood. These are guys like the Adamses, the Lees, the Roosevelts. They're people that have been political leaders in America for a long time, and they are losing their status to the new money, the new rich. They look down on them because the old rich went to Harvard or Yale, and these new rich people probably didn't even go to college at all, like Carnegie. And so we see that there's this kind of social disdain between the old rich and the new rich. It gets so dramatic that by the end of this time period, the top 10% of America own almost all of America's wealth, 90%. What's more astounding is when you flip that, which means 90% of America is fighting and scrabbling over just 10% of the wealth. And so we certainly have the Gilded Age as a time of these powerful rich men controlling America and its money. And so in the top left-hand side of the picture, you see the old nobility and the peasants giving them everything they have. Now in America, in the bottom of the main picture, you see all the peasants now, the small businessmen, the factory worker, the farmer. They're down, they're begging, and they're giving all of their profits, all of their wealth to the new nobility, the captains of industry. And we see them controlling things through legislation. You see that written on the sword because now these trusts control business. You see trust across this banner. You see tariff and monopoly. All of these things are helping tools that the rich use to make themselves richer. And their castle is a factory. So certainly this idea of wealth and who should have it and is this fair, it's on the minds of Americans by the end of the time period. Nouveau riche continued. So we've talked about some views of wealth. Some people think that wealth is bad, that Rockefeller and Carnegie are bad men because they abuse people. We saw it in the robber baron cartoon, and so we call them, robber barons. Other people like Andrew Carnegie believe that wealth is good. They're captains of industry. They provide jobs. Carnegie also believes that wealth is good because then you can give back to society and help other people. So we have these competing views of wealth. Is it good or bad? Who should have it and who shouldn't? And so we get another view of wealth. We get this thing called social Darwinism by William Graham Sumner. William Graham Sumner is this guy, and he says that wealth is actually good. He says that wealth is an indication of who are the better human beings. Right at this time, we see evolution coming out, Charles Darwin's Origins of Species. And so William Graham Sumner says, look, if there is evolution in the animal world, there must be evolution in the human world, survival of the fittest. And so if rich people are rich, it's because they are something in their DNA or something in their makeup makes them better people. They're superhumans. And all the people that are poor that we see in the pictures, the little boys working in a mine or this family struggling to just feed themselves, they're poor because, well, they're lesser humans. There's something wrong with them. So don't help them. Let them die out. If you let them die, you're just going to make humanity better. Let the rich survive and prosper, and let the poor die, and humanity will get rid of the bad end of the gene pool. Obviously, this is a very harsh way of looking at humanity and wealth, but it is a view of wealth that comes out at this time. Next, the New South. The New South, we briefly mentioned it before. It was on one of your study cards. The New South is this idea during Reconstruction, right, between 1865 and 1877, when the South is being rebuilt. What should the South be rebuilt as? Should it be an agrarian country, part of the country that still just grows cash crops, or should it be industrial? And the goal of the New South is to make the South a carbon copy of the North, is to make them industrial, to build railroads, to increase cotton production, but also build textile mills in the South. It makes sense. If the cotton is in the South, you can reduce your cost by building the factory right next to it that turns that cotton into textiles. And so we see this idea that we're going to make the South industrial. So on the left-hand side, we see more railroads built in the South at this time to benefit business. And on the right-hand side, we see a comparison between the amount of textiles being produced in New England to the amount of textiles being produced in the South. And over time, we see New England starts to lose its dominance of the textile industry and the South gain its dominance. And it takes a long time, but that trend starts in the last half of the 19th century when we see this dream of a new industrial South start. Is it successful? Well, we know it is in the textile industry, but does the New South help actually African Americans have a better standard of living? And the answer is no. If you're going to open up a new factory in the South, we see that white people are going to own the factories and they're going to hire other white people. And so for these higher paying factory jobs, we're going to see poor white people benefit. They're going to get the jobs to work in the factories, but African Americans are going to be stuck sharecropping. They're going to be stuck in poverty. And then we're going to see that they don't get these higher paying jobs. They go to the white people. And so certainly the New South helps white people, but it does not help African Americans. Next, who are the people who invest in the New South? They're going to be mostly Northerners. And so the North is going to open up these textile factories, not Southerners. The Southerners are still broke from the Civil War. And so the North is going to be the one that actually owns the factories, even though they're in the South. The North is going to be the one that owns the railroads, that owns the banks. And so the South still is kind of treated like a colony. The North has most of the manufacturing, or even if they don't have the manufacturing, it's in the South, they still are making all the profits. And so the North becomes very industrial, still like we see in the map, and the South has a few industries, textile, but that's about it. So the view of this New South, outside of textile manufacturing, we're just not going to see it. We're not going to see a lot of steel industry or other things happen in the